They say you can't polish a turd, but if this France team teaches us anything, it's that you can absolutely polish a mad shit. France at the moment are glorious, and on Saturday they took one step closer to glory as they put in a performance that was pure method to the madness, showcasing themselves as a side with substance to back up the batshit style. This was France's first win in Cardiff since 2010, which coincidentally was also the opening game of round 3 in a year in which France went on to win not just the tournament, but the whole hog Grand Slam. For a full decade, Le Pays de Galles has been France's major bogey team, with their only championship win over the Welsh coming in the prolonged final seconds of this ridiculous 100-minute game from 3 years ago. And after a mad comeback in Paris and a mad quarter-final robbery in Oita last year, this was a statement by France. That performance against England was not a fluke. Je suis back. So how did France put themselves in pole position for their first title in 10 years, and are there still encouraging signs for Wayne Pivac's still pretty new team after 2 losses on the trot? I want to begin with a man who, if handed a big shit and a feather duster on Saturday, probably could have made that turd pretty goddamn shiny, because during those 80 minutes, I don't think anything was beyond Romain Ntamack. There's something sumptuous about the way he plays. He isn't showy or loud or pushy, he's just utter class. He makes decisions that are bold, but always correct. It's like if you gave Quade Cooper common sense and an incredible head of hair that is itself a force of nature and beautiful and a source of much envy. I've got a lot of hair envy for Romain Ntamack. I think it's one I'm slightly obsessed with his hair. Much of the attention this championship so far has been on his halfback partner Antoine Dupont instead, and deservedly so, because he's been playing so well that whilst he was in Cardiff, the statue of Gareth Edwards probably went to visit him. But Ntamack has been beyond excellent and capped off an outstanding performance by paying tribute to his old man by emulating a meal and scoring an interception try in Cardiff. This gave us a further parallel with France's win in their 2010 Grand Slam campaign as well, with Ntamack's interception try looking eerily similar to this by France's 10 that day, Francois Trinh-Duc. But whereas Trinh-Duc's try was opportunistic, Ntamack's was outstanding defence, and it begins with some really good attack by Wales to open France right up. Wayne Pivac was originally appointed by the Scarlets because they wanted a capable forwards coach who could focus on improving their big boys' handling and skill set, not just their scrum and line-out, and that explains a lot about how his teams approach rugby in general. Much like Eddie Jones has been talking about repeatedly, Pivac is working on building a philosophy of interchangeable forwards and backs, with the most obvious examples being Faletau and Tipuric slotting in as first receiver, typically the roles of a 10, 12 or 15. The team's basic shape comprises of 2 pods of 2 men and 1 pod of 3 men, and it's Dan Bigger's job to select which runner from those pods to bring onto the ball. Whereas most teams place their link man, usually one of the 2 centres or the fullback, directly behind the shape, Wales's tends to be diagonal. This makes the whole setup kind of homogeneous, making it more difficult to tell where the forwards end and the backs begin. So, off a midfield scrum, Wales work the ball out to the wing, the aim simply being to set up a ruck on the 15-metre line. McNichol gets dragged slightly wider, so Davis plays a phase in field to get them into perfect position. From there, they set into shape. Bigger takes the ball already knowing which pass he's giving, because Wales love to bring Hadley Parkes in on this line. Parkes begins in the typical distributor linkman position, but rushes round to play the role of a forward. The French are watching for a 2-man shape, but Parkes' status as a big boy turns it into a free. France, as most teams do, have forwards set in the middle of the field to account for these big standard Boshy carries, but Parkes hits a small hole between these forwards and outside centre Vumi Vakatawa. It was actually a similar line that led to Wales' own first try, as he fixes Ntamack and Vincent, allowing Dylan Lewis to throw the greatest Welsh prop dummy since Gethin Jenkins against Namibia in 2011. Let's have a moment to appreciate the sheer glory of Gethin. Thank you very much. Now back to the rugby. Dylan Lewis also did a nice dummy and goes not quite under the posts. This use of Parkes is a simple deception that's really hard to read and has the habit of contorting a defence. They can read it in time to stop him going through, certainly, but not quite quickly enough to stop him dead. Momentum gained, defenders pulled in, and because Wales have a pod of 2 ready to go, the clear out is clean and quick. However, the key here is that as well as Wales going forward and France going back, Parkes hits the inside of the 13 channel. Quick ball with the 13 on the floor essentially folds the French defence in on itself. There's still the same amount of paper, but it looks so much smaller. It's now struggling to cover the space. This origami trick means France are left with just guard Charles Olivon and the sleepwalking shell of Teddy Thomas out on the wing. However, because Wales' trick was to narrow the defence, it means God King Supreme Nick Tompkins has to drift out in order to use that space. He does the right thing in running slightly sideways, but it makes it all the more difficult whilst you're running as such to fix the last man. Tompkins has to rely on his timing, unable to straighten and give, and he gets that timing pretty much spot on. It's just that so does Untermack. This is incredibly ballsy defensive. It's perfect. It literally couldn't be any better. It results in 7 points. It's a 14-point turnaround. Untermack reads Tompkins better than Tompkins can read himself. He drifts, times it, takes it, runs it in. It's just absolutely brilliant. Roman Untermack was also at the heart of France's first try, another parallel to the 2010 game as a Frenchman scored their first Six Nations try off an innocuous Welsh mistake in the 6th minute. This looks like a simple knock-on by Lee Halfpenny, a man who normally catches quicker and cleaner than the coronavirus, but he's forced to drop it by a really smart kicking strategy from Untermack and Gautier. Wales's backfield has long since been one of the best marshalled in the world, with both Williams and Halfpenny not just incredibly solid under the high ball, but astounding at covering the space themselves and also communicating with their wings and the 10 who Wales also like to drop back. Knowing that wherever they put it behind, the ball will be covered, France opted to kick to the edge of each player's jurisdiction. There's no better demonstration of that tactic than this. They hang it on the spot between the space where Dan Biggar would be covering and the space where Lee Halfpenny would be covering, meaning the two Welsh players compete with each other for the ball. Here, Dan Biggar has to cover a hell of a lot of ground to get the ball, and he knocks it on, preoccupied with actually getting there instead of timing his jump and just taking the ball. And then on the try itself, he lands it exactly between Josh Adams' space and Halfpenny's, leading to a moment of them each wondering whether or they should go for it, whether they should jump. Are you taking this? Am I? Eventually, Halfpenny decides he's going to go for it, but the doubt in his mind is enough to force a really rare knock-on. Anthony Boutier is then running a superb, lovely late line to just judge the bounce, take the ball, and score his first test try. However, this wasn't the only thing France did to work around one of Wales' strengths. The Sean Edwards' influence in defence has been much lauded and talked about, and France are clearly getting fitter the longer they spend with him, but I think his biggest influence on this game may have been more about Wales' defence than his own. Over the last few years, Wales, and in particular God King Alan Wyn-Jones and the ever-remarkable Justin Tipuric, have become pretty much the God Kings of the choke tackle. The idea is simply you hold a player off the ground to turn a tackle into a maul to take advantage of a law's loophole whereby a collapsed maul gives the defending team the scrum when the ball is unplayable, as opposed to a ruck where it goes to the attacking team. Wales are very, very good at this, and a lot of that was Sean Edwards' influence. So he sent the excellent and under-discussed this tournament, Bernard Le Roux, on a mission. Watch right here. Wales are a split second away from this being called as a maul and hence winning the ball, but in comes Le Roux from half a pitch away. He takes a run up and makes an entirely legal cheap shot on Nick Tompkins' back and gets the thing right to ground just before a maul can be called, meaning Wales have to roll away and France can retain the ball. He did this time and time again. Wales went to hold it up and Le Roux just steps in to stop them. The one occasion on which Wales were successful is the exception that proves the rule. Knowing Tipuric and Biggar will give it a shot, France placed Lock Le Roux not in a line-out but in midfield to make sure Wales can't turn them over. However, this actually ironically means Le Roux enters too early and instead becomes a key part in making it into a maul. He's desperate to drag it to ground, look at him, but by the time he manages to do so, it's too late. The maul has been called and Wales get the ball. However, it works out okay because from this very scrum, France got Wales did manage to get things going properly later on, however, eventually leading to this try by Matt Carley's best friend, Daniel Rhys-Biggar. Wales work it out to the wing and run their usual pattern as Biggar steps in and selects the forward runner in the most space. This turns out to be an awful lot of space because it's enough for the sizable frame of Will Rowlands to fire right through. Two men follow up in support and Justin Tipuric just makes the absolute lightest of tugs on Nathan Dupant's jersey, slowing the scrum off ever so slightly and allowing Thomas Williams to get away. Wales recycle possession and now it's France's turn for some subtle shithousery as Nick Tompkins steps in at scrum half and Demba Bamba just slaps his arm to make the pass somewhat erratic. However, Biggar recovers, slings it out. McNichol hits the hole, and from here it continues. Wales' support work has improved immensely this tournament, going from one of the biggest down points, one of the biggest work-ons needed under Gatland, to kind of very good. And then, eventually, Wales have the ball on the opposition line. This also happened at the end of the first half, but to no avail. Wales battered away at an eclectic tempo, speeding and slowing like an out-of-sequence remix of Proud Mary. Forward work was stagnant. Gareth Davies only really had one carrying option at a time, and France had plenty of time to hit that guy. Contrast that to how many options France give Dupont here, and how that stretches the Welsh defence. And then, when Wales do get the ball out, they were way too frantic, offload happy, and that leads eventually to the knock-on that ends the half. They lacked any sense of calm, but they're also kind of too slow. Then, in the shed, have their orange, out the other end, and Wales suddenly get it right. As Hamish Watson's carry in the lead up to Chris Harris's try in the other game that Saturday proved, so often effective play in the 22 is just about injecting pace whilst remaining organised. Wales's ball presentation is excellent phase on phase, and that allows Williams to whip it away quickly. Each player isn't carrying into the stomachs, but rather the gaps between French defenders, meaning two of them are likely going to commit. And then we have things like Wainwright here just trying to grapple and engage on those fringes. He only tugs for a second, which is also what Yonoji told that judge, but that's a second it takes for Williams to get the ball to Bigger, who's able to crash over for the try. Yeah, I guess. But even if he doesn't, Wales have a chunky overlap and plenty of space in which to work it, providing Roman Untermack doesn't pull his old trick again. Those tiny moments of getting away with it are so often what decides tight games like this, and France knew exactly how to push referee Matt Carley in a way Wales only knew how to test his patience. Anton Dupont's position here is completely illegal under new directives being really pushed to all referees at all levels and ruins Wales' attack, but Carley let him off earlier, so Dupont does it again. Justin Tipuric had clearly identified France was slow to get back 10 in previous games, and he got himself in a position to take quick taps repeatedly, but the one time he actually did it, France commit what is, by the book, a yellow card offence, but they know Carley isn't going to bin him without a warning first. And then we have the most controversial decision. Now, I'm on record as being perhaps one of the most forgiving people in the world when it comes to deliberate knock-ons, but Paul Willemse is a dirty player. That's his whole MO. He's a player who was too indisciplined to play second row for the Springboks, for crying out loud. And he bats it away. He knows what he's doing. He adjusts to make it look like he's making a tackle afterward. But the moment he gets away with it and saves his team a try, it goes from scumbaggery and skullduggery to brilliant play. Thanks to his risky judgment call, France escaped their 22 unscathed. I can feel the comment section already warming up for me just expressing an opinion on this, but in rugby, the referee's decision is final, and therefore, it's not cheating if you get away with it. And boy, did Paul Willemse get away with it. And speaking of getting away with it, the final play saw almost just nick it for Wales, making a lovely break and searing downfield. This is a fantastic tackle by Arthur Van Sant, who has a hell of an international career ahead of him. And then he does this. This is the kind of thing you would chalk up to experience. If only he wasn't in the process of becoming the first person to play a test in the Millennium Stadium, who was born after it was built. He makes no effort to move, he just lies in the way, he knows what he's doing. As Tompkins later says to Carley, this prevents him being able to get the ball back to present it properly and cleanly and get the ball away from Camille Chat, who's done phenomenally, really properly, incredibly well for a hooker to get back, get over the ball and win the turnover, and with it, win France the game. When he hears the whistle being blown, you can see Van Sant getting up, thinking it's him that's conceded the penalty, and he begins to feign innocence. This is virtually an impossible situation to referee. Tompkins is 100% holding on. Both sides have committed infringements, but Wales's is more obvious and by the law book probably the worst offence. It's just that penalty may not have come if not for France's. This ruck is like World War I. There is no clear good guy or bad guy. Everyone's doing some pretty shady shit. But France are like the Allies in that they've managed to contort the image that we see better to make themselves look, historically speaking, like the heroes. And Matt Carley buys it. I'm not pointing this out to say that France are shitty and dirty or Matt Carley is a nonce or anything, but that France are smart and wily, and Matt Carley is a human being, albeit one that Dan Biggar doesn't like very much. He refereed the game the way he saw it, and pound for pound, euro for euro, France played to that better. Because this France team might be glorious, but they're also intelligent. The first half, they ran a little bit wild, but the second half, they flipped it. Now the batshit style was putting polish on the substance. The method was in the foreground with just a little bit of madness when they needed it. This was France's first win in Cardiff in 10 years, and it puts them 2 games away from their first Grand Slam in just as long, because if they keep this up, in a few weeks' time, it'll be something significantly more impressive than a turd that they'll have in their hands to polish. Hello, how are you? How are you doing? Good, glad to hear it. Happy St. David's Day. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day and you're dressed as daffodils. Thank you for watching that. That was part 2 of round 3. There is a video elsewhere on the channel of the game between Italy and Scotland. That one had been my longest ever on the World Cup final until this one, which has overtaken it now. So thanks to everyone that's watched them, everyone that's supported the channel on Patreon especially. That is now how I I'm able to make that. I appreciate it all enormously, so thank you. I particularly want to mention one Mr. Young Kit Colby, who I have spoken to, your wonderful, kind mother. And I just want to firstly thank you for the support. And also, I've heard you've recently missed out on the Under-13s development stream. And I just want to make the point that, and this goes out to hundreds of people who must have heard similar things, will hear similar things, that the history of rugby is littered with people who didn't make it early age groups. You know, Aaron Wainwright, I mentioned in that very video, he didn't take it up until he was 17. You've got the likes of Lloyd Burns and Andrew Coombs, who were playing semi-pro rugby and weren't in any development pathways until they were 23, 24. Makazole Mapimpi, recently, of course, didn't sign a professional contract until I think he's 23. It happens regardless. And also, and I want to make this point again, that even if it turns out that, like I discovered, you're not very good at rugby, there's still a place in the sport for you, and there always will be. And that, I suppose, needs to be saying to everyone. Even if, as it turns out, no one can afford to watch the thing as of next year. I have some strong feelings on this particular story that broke the other day, and I may come on to them as we go forward. But in the meantime, I'll be moving on to England against Ireland. That'll be the next video up. And beyond that, we'll move on to rugby and potentially even rugby.
Do you repeat, please?